All right, number 9. Yeah, please watch the verses because they jump back and forth in an odd order.
We have something special for you. Over in the Glenview New Church School, every other year, we study the travels of the children of Israel from the land of Egypt all the way to the land of Canaan. And as part of that, we study the giving of the Ten Commandments on Mount Sinai. And as part of that piece of our course, the 3rd and 4th grade children memorized the Ten Commandments in their full long play version. And today we're going to present to you a model of Mount Sinai that they themselves made. And also we're going to get to hear them proudly recite the Ten Commandments that they've memorized. So welcome, and why don't we rise for our opening song.
Our opening song is number 113, Lord Look Down, 113.
Be strong and of good courage. Do not be afraid, nor be discouraged, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. Let us pray. Dear Lord God, our Father in heaven, you provide us with so many spiritual tools for our spiritual toolkit that can help us through life. Help us today to focus in on the 10 most helpful ones of all, your 10 commandments. Remind us of their power to help us make any new breakthrough that we long to make in our lives. Our Father, who art in the heavens, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, as in heaven, so upon the earth. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we also forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. O Lord, forgive us our trespasses. Amen. Please rise. And if you open your worship brochures, at the top of the second page is a recitation that we'll say together this morning, taken from the book of Joshua, chapter 3. So Joshua said to the children of Israel, Behold, the ark of the covenant of the Lord of all the earth is crossing over before you into the Jordan. And it shall come to pass, as soon as the soles of the feet of the priests who bear the ark of the Lord of all the earth, shall rest in the waters of the Jordan, that the waters of the Jordan shall be cut off. They will stand in one heap. Please be seated. You may remember the story of the children of Israel coming out of the bondage in the land of Egypt and traveling for how many years through the wilderness? How many? 40 years through the wilderness. Finally, at the end of our study in the 3rd and 4th grade religion classroom, we brought them to the Jordan River. Once they got to the Jordan River, how were they going to get across that river? That was the question. Well, it was very simple. The Lord told Joshua, who was the new commander of the Israelites, to talk to the people. And he told them, the Ark of the Covenant, the Ark of Yahuwah, will go first. The Ark will be carried by the priests. And when the priests are getting closer to the Jordan River and the soles of their feet, the bottoms of their shoes, touch the water of the river, suddenly the waters will be parted. And the waters that are flowing down the river will continue on their way all the way to the Dead Sea. And the waters that are on this side coming down will stand up like a pile, meaning it would sort of start filling up like a lake. Okay? It would just stop. And then the priests were told, you will stand in the midst of the Jordan River on dry ground, and all the people will be able to cross over. And there were probably 2 million people if you count men, women, and children. A lot of people crossing over that day. So that was what was going to happen. And I want to read to you that part of the story. It's a little bit longer reading than we normally do, but it's important as a basis for what we're going to do today. Then Joshua rose early in the morning, and they set out from Acacia Grove and came to the Jordan, he and all the children of Israel, and lodged there before they crossed over. So it was after 3 days that the officers went through the camp, and they commanded the people, saying, when you see the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God, and the priests bearing it, then you shall set out from your place and go after it. Yet there shall be a space between you and it, about 2,000 cubits by measure. Do not come near it, that you may know the way by which you must go, for you have not passed this way before. And Joshua said to the people, sanctify yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do wonders among you. Then Joshua spoke to the priests, saying, take up the ark of the covenant and cross over ahead of the people. So they took up the ark of the covenant and went before the people. And Joshua said, by this you shall know that the living God is among you, and that he will without fail drive your enemies out from before you. Behold, the ark of the covenant of the Lord of all the earth is crossing over ahead of you into the Jordan. And it shall come to pass, as soon as the soles of the feet of the priests who bear the ark of the Lord of all the earth, shall rest in the waters of the Jordan, that the waters of the Jordan shall be cut off, the waters that come down from upstream, and they shall stand as a heap. So it was, when the people set out from their camp to cross over the Jordan, that with the priests bearing the ark of the covenant before the people, and as those who bore the ark came to the Jordan, and the feet of the priests who bore the ark dipped in the edge of the waters, that the waters which came down from upstream stood still and rose in a heap very far away. So the waters that went down into the salt sea failed and were cut off, and the people crossed over opposite Jericho. Then the priests who bore the ark of the covenant of the Lord stood firm on dry ground in the midst of the Jordan, and all Israel crossed over on dry ground until all the people had crossed completely over the Jordan. So there's the story of a great miracle. Does it remind you of another miracle in the story of the children of Israel? The parting of the Red Sea. It's very much like the parting of the Red Sea. Exactly. And when the children of Israel crossed the Red Sea, you remember that there were 4 events that happened. They were thirsty, then they were hungry, then they were thirsty, then they were attacked by the Amalekites. Then they came to Mount Sinai, and there was where the 10 Commandments were given to them. Now, in the story we just read, it says that the Ark of the Covenant would go ahead of the people of Israel. And what was in the Ark of the Covenant? Do you remember what was in the Ark? Anyone besides my 3rd and 4th grade students? Who remembers what was in the Ark? The Ark was a golden box with angels on top. Okay, we're going to resort to adults now. Here we go. The tablets of stone with the 10 Commandments on them. So when it says the Ark of the Covenant, a covenant is referring to the 10 Commandments. A covenant is an agreement that you make with someone else with responsibilities on both sides. So the 10 Commandments were an agreement between the Lord and you. So it was a covenant. Now, I told you at the beginning of our service today that the 3rd and 4th graders of the Glenview New Church schools every other year study this part of the story and the giving of the 10 Commandments. And as part of that study, they memorize the 10 Commandments in their long form. Now, sometimes we'll have a student who decides he or she would rather learn the shorter version. And today we have one person who memorized the shorter version, and we have 3 students who memorized the longer version, all right? And so we're going to demonstrate that to you. Now, when the children of Israel got to Mount Sinai, it says that there was a cloud that came down on top of the mountain. So here we have a papier-mâché mountain that the students have made and painted. They had a boundary marker set all the way around the mountain because you weren't supposed to come up and touch the mountain. There was a cloud that came down. There was thunder. There was lightning. And there was the sound of a trumpet, which we won't play today. But there was a lot going on. And then the Lord wrote the Ten Commandments out with his own finger. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on the lightning in our mountain, and then I'm going to start the thunder, and our first student is going to recite the short version of the Ten Commandments. Mari, will you come forward, please? And wait till I've started it, Mari. Okay. Go ahead, Mari.
And God spoke all these words, saying, I am the Lord your God, the right of land of you, out of the house of bondage. You shall not literally God before my face. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Honor your father and your mother. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. Honor your father. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. You shall not cover your neighbor's house. You shall not cover your neighbor's wife or anything as your neighbor's.
Well done. Thank you. Hooray. Good. And now, if the other three students can come forward, you're going to hear the long version of the Ten Commandments. Let me start the thunder again.
And God spoke all these words, saying, I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. You shall have no other gods before my face. You shall not make for yourself any carved image or any likeness of anything that is in the heavens above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the waters under the earth. You shall not bow down to them nor serve them. For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children, to the third and fourth generations of those who hate me, but showing mercy to thousands to those who love me and keep my commandments. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not hold guiltless who takes his name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God. And you shall do no work. You and your son, and your daughter, and your manservant, and your maidservant, and your animal, and your strangers within the cities. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea and all that is in them, and rested the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. Honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long upon the land which the Lord your God is giving you. You shall not murder, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not steal, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his donkey, nor anything that is your neighbor's.
Well, thank you very much. Years that I've been here, that's the 8th time that we've done that, and every time it's been done just perfectly, word perfect, they don't miss a word, and I'll bet that's the fastest it's ever been said. We had one year where 2 of the students wanted to see how fast they could say what they just said, and they were able to do it in 52 seconds. That is fast talking. So I want to shift gears now and talk with you about our subject for today. And our subject today is personal breakthroughs. And that subject of making personal breakthroughs is wrapped up in the story of the children of Israel crossing the Jordan River into the land of Canaan. It's also going to build on the topic that Mac had a couple of weeks ago, where the Lord commissioned Joshua to be strong and of good courage and to lead the children of Israel into the land of Canaan. So in talking with the adults and the teens who are here today, let's start by talking about what we mean by a personal breakthrough. A breakthrough is defined in the dictionary as a sudden, dramatic, important discovery or development in your life. And it's also defined as an instance of achieving success. So that's what we're talking about today. Breakthrough is something that often starts as a heartfelt desire on our parts to do something or to be somewhere in your life. So, for example, a child wants to master a challenging piece on the piano, or a teenager wants to be class president in their high school, or a young mom wants to be more patient with her 3-year-old daughter, or an entrepreneur wants to chart a new course toward honesty and transparency. So often the barriers that we experience to making the next personal or emotional or spiritual, typically they can start with mistaken thoughts or beliefs about ourselves. Thank you, Phil. I don't want to give everybody in the room a headache. So mistaken beliefs and thoughts that can be in our minds about ourselves or about other people or about other faiths or cultures, or about the world around us, or even about the Lord. Those mistaken thoughts or beliefs are things that can hurt us in relationships, and they can hurt our relationship even with the Lord. Those mistaken thoughts and beliefs are symbolized by the waters of the Jordan River that are blocking the children of Israel from entering the land of Canaan. So some examples of mistaken thoughts or beliefs could include, I'm not a very good friend, or I haven't done enough to be worthy of other people's love, or I'm a powerful person and other people ought to respect me, or that other person over there is stupid or in some other way less than me, or that entire race of people over there, or that faith group or that culture is inferior to mine, or even with regard to the Lord, God is out to get me. He isn't there for me, he doesn't really care, and he couldn't help me even if I wanted him to. Simple examples of mistaken beliefs or thinking. On a granular level, in relationships, it could be any thought that we have relative to another person that simply isn't true, or any, we say in our world today, dysfunctional way of thinking about relationships or interacting with other people around us. So these are examples of the kinds of barriers like the Jordan River blocking the children of Israel that can block us from making the next move forward. So sometimes the barriers that we experience are big and imposing, but at other times they can be pretty small. And the fact is, the Jordan River isn't a very big river. It isn't very wide, not that imposing. The things that we experience as barriers can even be somewhat unseen, things that we don't yet realize about our own spiritual makeup, like an unseen rudder beneath the surface of the water that's steering our boat. At times, we can despair about ever being able to make the change or the improvement or the breakthrough that we want to make. We might think, for example, this relationship or this friendship or this business association or this marriage is so badly damaged it can't be repaired. But what did the Lord say to Joshua when he commissioned him to lead the children of Israel across the Jordan River and into the land of Canaan? He said, "Be strong and of good courage. Do not be afraid, nor be discouraged, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go." And in the reading of Joshua chapter 3 that we did earlier, Joshua said to the people, "Sanctify yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do wonders among you. The living God is among you," he said, "and he will without fail drive your enemies out from before you." So what he was saying to us basically is, it's true, it's real. The breakthrough that you long to make is something that can happen. You can and even will cross over this river on dry ground safely. And when you do, you will rejoice. So how do we, how do you, how do I make the next breakthrough that we long to make? That's the subject of Joshua chapter 3. It often involves regrouping, like the children of Israel did when they camped beside the waters of the Jordan for 3 days until they felt ready to make the crossing. And then it can involve rededicating ourselves to simple spiritual principles that are known throughout the world and that you and I have known ever since we were as young as these 3rd and 4th graders. So the first thing to notice about Joshua chapter 3 are the number of times that certain people or things appear in that chapter. In just 17 verses, the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord is mentioned 10 times. The covenant itself is mentioned 7 times. The Lord is mentioned by name 7 times. The priests, who symbolize that part of us that are determined to put spiritual principles into practice, are mentioned 7 times. And Joshua, who symbolizes true ideas that are willing to fight for personal improvement, is mentioned 7 times. So those simple facts about the story in themselves paint a picture of a powerful and unstoppable force for making any new breakthrough that you or I want to make. To see this, I want to focus with you on just 2 of the images in the story. First, there is the image of the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord. In this story, the people were told, when you see the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord your God, and the priests bearing it, then you shall set out from where you are and go after it. The priests were told to take up the ark, and later they were told to stand with the ark in the midst of the Jordan. And so they did what they were told. They took up the ark, and they stood in the midst of the Jordan on dry ground. In this chapter, the Ark of the Covenant is a symbol for the Lord himself and his goodness and truth, but especially the goodness of the Lord. It's a reminder to us that any time we want to make a particular personal breakthrough, to invite the Lord's presence and goodness into the mix, so that we can be coming from a good place, we would say, a place of love and a place of goodwill in any breakthrough that we're wanting to make, and so that we would have those same things as our ultimate goal in making that breakthrough. The Ark of the Covenant is also a reminder to us to tap into the love that we feel in our hearts for spiritual principles that can guide us. The second thing to focus on is the covenant itself. And whenever the covenant is mentioned, it is a reference to the 10 Commandments that were housed in the Ark of the Covenant. They are, we're told in our theology, all-encompassing universal principles of wise and loving life that are known to all people throughout the world. Everybody knows you don't murder your fellow human being. Everybody knows you don't commit adultery with another person's spouse, and on it goes. We're told in our theology that the Lord is in those friendship and healthy interactions and togetherness with other people around us and with the Lord. It's interesting that when our theology talks about the 10 Commandments relative to personal breakthroughs, they focus specifically on 4 of those commandments: the commandment against murder, adultery, stealing, and bearing false witness, along with any underlying desire or compulsion that we might feel to break those 4 commandments. We're told in our theology these are the evils that must be abstained from as sins against God in order for any new breakthrough to occur. So think about that for just a moment. If we refuse to commit murder, physically or on a spiritual level, by refusing to entertain feelings of resentment or hate or hostility against other people, or to harbor intentions of revenge. If we refuse to commit adultery, being unwilling to do or say anything that would harm marriage, or being unwilling to engage in lewd or lustful or licentious or cruel thoughts and behaviors. If we're willing to, or if we're unwilling to take what doesn't belong to us, either physically or again on a spiritual level. If we refuse to take honor and credit away from the Lord, focusing people's attention instead on us and our own reputations, seeking to get whatever we can out of life, even if it's at the expense of other people, or trusting ourselves and believing in ourselves so much that we don't allow the Lord to lead us. And if we're careful not to lie to ourselves and to others, or to rationalize or justify any of the behaviors that we're talking about right now, then there's really no personal breakthrough that we can't and even won't make in our lives. So the 10 Commandments, especially the commandments on murder, adultery, stealing, and bearing false witness, when we understand them in detail and carefully live them, have the power to free us or get us past any personal barrier that we encounter or any mistaken way of thinking that we have floating around in our spirits. And they have the power to make that new breakthrough a reality. So, crossing the Jordan symbolizes, from a new church perspective, any personal breakthrough that we make as we get past mistaken ways of thinking and believing that can block our entrance to a new and better way of life. And in that story, as we make that crossing, each time we cross the River Jordan into the next experience of the land of Canaan, it now symbolizes breakthrough possible and introduced us into that next experience of the Promised Land. The Jordan River now symbolizes the introductory principles that serve as a border marker of who we are and a boundary of what we stand for. So there is one more thing then that we can say about the River Jordan and the crossing of it. In Jeremiah chapter 12, there's a question that's asked, and the question is this: how do you deal with the pride of the Jordan? And later on in Jeremiah 49, it mentions, quote, the arrogance of the Jordan. One of the things that can make personal breakthroughs challenging is when our pride or our ego gets involved. The opinion we have of that other person, or the assessment that we've made of a situation, or the position we've taken on some particular issue, and now we're at a point of being married to that position. We're absolutely right, and the other person is completely wrong. Or, if there is room for seeing ourselves being in error, it can be so hard sometimes to admit that to ourselves, or appropriately to another person, or even to the Lord, in such a way that we can let go and come at things from a fresh start and enjoy a new personal breakthrough. But the simple truth is, if we can acknowledge that our pride or our ego has gotten involved and that it is blocking us, and if we can simply get past that, then the Lord can take us to a new and better place. So today, we're talking about breaking through mistaken ways of thinking and also selfish pride. We're talking about coming at it from a place of love for spiritual principles and goodwill for other people. We're talking about aiming at what is truly loving and wise as the ultimate goal in any breakthrough that we hope to make. And we're talking about getting there by means of earnest and diligent practice, especially of the commandments on murder, adultery, stealing, and bearing false witness. All of that is wrapped up in this story of the children of Israel crossing the Jordan River. So it was, we read, when the people set out from their camp to cross over the Jordan, with the priests bearing the Ark of the Covenant before the people. And as those who bore the ark came to the Jordan, and the feet of the priests dipped in the edge of the water, symbolizing our walk of life, practicing the 10 Commandments, that the waters were cut off, and the people crossed over. Then the priests who bore the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord stood firm on dry ground in the midst of the Jordan, and all Israel crossed safely over on dry ground until all the people had crossed completely over the Jordan. So I want to leave you then with a simple question, and that is, what is the Jordan River that you will cross later this afternoon or in the coming week? Amen. I invite you now to bow your heads for a time of silent prayer. Lord God, will you now hear the silent prayers of our hearts? Amen. We rise for our next song.
Our next song is number 32, Drowning in Peace. 32.
Lord, freely we have received and freely we give. May the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ be with you all. Amen. Will you stay standing for our last song?
Our final song is number 119, My Life is in You, Lord. 119.
Lord,
piece like that reminds me of just the sheer talent that we have in this small church in our music teams and our music leaders. Thank you so much, music team. Really appreciate it. So we have plenty of time for some thoughts or comments that people might have on anything that we talked about today. We have some microphones that are roving so that people who are online can hear your thoughts. Anyone have any thoughts or comments? And if not, we'll move on to announcements. So we have, this week is the final week of school for the Glenview New Church schools. And there's an announcement here on the back of the page that talks about our school ending activities if you'd like to be involved in those. Second is that we have a work party coming up this coming Saturday to take down some dead trees on our campus here and also across the street at the Manse. Would love any help that we could get for that. I wouldn't mention 4th of July were it not for the fact, because it's so far off, I wouldn't mention 4th of July were it not for the fact that we're having some trouble getting people to help make that event happen. So if you could read about that, in case you might be able to help out with that. We don't want to have the event not happen here at the Glenview New Church. Let's see. Item 4, we have an announcement from the Contributions Committee, if Erica could have the floor for a bit.
Yeah, hi there. The Contributions Committee is launching a campaign. It's a matching campaign for new donors for the 18-19 fiscal year, which starts July 1st. And a new donor is defined as anybody who is returning after, anybody who has not donated last year, let's say. So this is an opportunity where there will be a one-to-one match for any new donations. I've got information on the information counter, and you also have that in your brochure. So thank you.
Thank you, Erica. Out on one of our credences out there are a number of cards for graduates this year, ranging anywhere from 8 to a master's program. They've been out there for a number of weeks, and we'd love to have as many people who haven't had a chance to sign in and be supportive of our graduates. Thank you so much to Cindy Parker for making that happen, for driving that thing for us, and coming up with it, not just driving it. And finally, let's see. For those of you who might be interested in learning more about those commandments on murder through bearing false witness, at one point in my career, I took everything that the New Church has to say about the Ten Commandments and reduced them into condensed bullet point outlines, which allow any one of us to see in about 2 minutes' time what the entire commandment means from a New Church perspective. Just boom, 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 boom. So it's really a neat digest. If anyone wants one of those, for any or all of those commandments, I'm happy to print them out for you. And finally, I just want to offer another word of congratulations to our 3rd and 4th graders. Great job! I will say that not only did they say the Ten Commandments the fastest they've ever been said, probably, but this is the latest in the season we've ever done this presentation. And with graduation or school closing happening this week, this was the last opportunity we had. So we took a little longer than we usually do. And I don't make it, but they all made it. So you crossed the river. That's great. Okay. Otherwise, everyone, I hope you have a good day. Yes?
Hi, I just wanted to invite you all. My private biology Loyola students are having a recital this afternoon at 2 o'clock here in this room. And please come and join us if you would like to hear some beautiful string music. Thanks.
Thank you for your attention to a number of announcements. Have a great day, a great week, and we'll see you next week for the Conquering of Jericho.